Hello, this is Catherine. This is Taking Tea with Catherine. This is a green tea, in keeping with my goal to drink more green tea. It's a matcha, turmeric, and passion fruit combination that I got recently on a walk to an Irish grocery store, of all things. But it was a good walk, so that was great. So now I have, again, far too many teas in my life, but hey, it's good. It's tasty. It's like got that matcha kind of consistency without being whipped up exactly, if you know what I mean. But fruity, but not too fruity. Yeah. So, speaking of green things, I am doing the Nature Writing Naturally tag today. I was tagged by Natalie at Curious Reader, who was one of the folks behind the Springathon, which was a wonderful reading initiative, a challenge that I am absolutely enthralled with. Even though it's technically over, I'm still kind of reading the books because, why not? Anyway, so I'm going to get started because there's a lot of different things I'm going to talk about here. And when I say favorite, I picked, when I was asked for the first question, what's your favorite nature writing book or author? I picked a favorite, but I don't like to say this is my ultimate favorite because sometimes I get excited about someone else and I don't want to, discount that interest or whatever. But and when I'm recommending a book, it doesn't mean that this is the best book ever that I ever read about this subject, just a book that I'm recommending. I don't think I need to say all that, but let's get started. So the favorite nature writing book or author, and a book itself is going to be too much to choose, but at least I thought an author I read a lot of, especially starting with his cat books, but then onwards is Tom Cox. He's one of the people who got me interested in maybe looking into getting a black cat because they seem so fascinating. I mean, since some of them are. But yeah, so this was a book about one of the first books I read of his. It wasn't the first book he read, but he writes a lot of different subjects, but he got into writing mostly about his cat and then about his life surrounding it. And someone's yelling in the hallway. And then he started branching out, as it were, into more kind of nature writing and whatnot. And I'm currently reading Ring the Hill. And I recommend if you just feel like hanging out with someone who's just exploring the mostly English countryside and making friends with different animals along the way, and also referring to different books he's read, because I love that too. So recommend a book about plants, and there's so many good ones, but I thought I'd recommend one, also kind of English countryside, or British. Oak and Ash and Thorn, The Ancient Woods and New Forests of Britain by Peter Fiennes, I think. And this was an advanced reader copy that I got, but it looks pretty good for an advanced reader copy, doesn't it? Oh, anyway, it really goes into kind of ecology or the history of, does it say history? Well, it says the ancient woods, but yeah, of trees and forests in Britain and how it's sustained and how some of it's not doing well and what different types of plants and animals have to do with it, like how it's affecting it, ones that come in from different places, and also literature. There's a lot of different references to mentions of literature in, as trees or whatever, which I love, and it kind of reminds me, just going off on a little tangent, of this book that I had gotten recently, Botanical Shakespeare. It's not really a sitting and reading all day book. A lot of it is just pictures, but it has beautiful drawings of different plants and flowers, etc., that were mentioned in Shakespeare and the quotes thereof. If I can't go walking in the Shakespeare garden in Central Park right now, then I might as well do the next best thing. So that's another recommendation. There's so many books. The Drunken Botanist, The Plants That Create the World's Great Drinks by Amy Stewart. So I'm recommending lots of planty books. Number 3, recommend a book about animals, and I could be here all day, but I will just be one that talks about different types of animals, so that kind of is well-rounded. How to Be a Good Creature by Cy Montgomery. Beautiful illustrations and beautiful encounters with many different kinds of life, domestic and otherwise. Definitely. Definitely recommended. So number 4, recommend a book about water, the sea, and I have another book that's coming up that will also be in that vein. There are so many. I could have mentioned one book that I don't seem to have. I thought maybe it was an ebook, but I can't seem to find it on my e-readers either. Was a book called Enslaved by Ducks by Bob Tart, which is basically about keeping ducks as kind of pets and the ups and downs of that. So that's kind of water related, but I thought I'd pick a book that could also go in the travel category, but a lot of the travel is over the water. And that's 80 Days, Nellie Bly and Elizabeth Bisland's history-making race around the world. Many years ago, by Matthew Goodman. Many years ago, these two ladies, first Nellie Bly, who already had a pretty good reputation, I think, of exposing the mental institutions of the time by checking into one. Such a story. But she was assigned, I don't remember, I should read the book again. I don't remember if she asked to do this herself or if someone else came up to her and said, can you do this? You know, whatever journal she was working for skips my mind right now. The book Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne was a popular book, and the deal was, can we get this lady around the world in less than 80? Can we beat that? And then Elizabeth Bisland got approached as a competitor. So suddenly it wasn't just, let's beat this book, let's beat another person, another woman. I mean, it was hard enough in those days to travel. What year was this? I'm trying to remember what year it was. Maybe it'll say something. 1889. So, I mean, okay, they're New York. It was New York, but I mean, still basically a time period where women didn't normally just up and travel by themselves, much less even, I mean, they probably didn't even walk outside by themselves. I'm not saying they didn't, but it wasn't always a thing. You know what I mean? So she's just a lady to just walk around or even travel on her own. I'm sure some did, but it wasn't something that you would sit down with your breakfast and say, you know what I think that I should do? You know, I personally have never traveled around the world by myself. I've gone as far as London, and that, in my own opinion, was enough of an adventure. But so at that time period, this was a big deal. So this was a race, and both of them one of them went east, one of them went west, and it goes, a lot of it, even though there were trains and stuff and other vehicular transports, it was very much a lot of travel over the water, as you can imagine. So that's why I picked it for water. Great story. If you like reading about travel, it's a good one. And it's not the travel book that I picked, but anyway, number 5, recommend a book about birds. So many books about birds. Again, that one about the ducks. There's so many. And I just picked one that I haven't yet seen recommended. It was one that helped me to get more interested in looking at birds rather than just noticing them occasionally. I mean, I always looked at ducks in past decades. I've always been into feeding ducks and hanging out, watching them, geese too. But I was never really interested in owls and whatnot in Central Park. I knew about the hawks. There were some news items about certain hawks breeding that were a big deal at the time. But this is Central Park in the Dark, More Mysteries of Urban Wildlife by Marie Wynne. I seem to have bought this at Book Off. I don't remember when I did that, but I got it for $1. But I know I read that before, and it's got, sadly, I don't know if it's sad or not, but it has For Sharon, see you in park. Warm regards, Marie Wynne. So it's like autographed by the author, but it was only $1. It's kind of weird. Anyway, so this is about kind of memoir about a group of people who go to Central Park in the later hours, where most people don't tend to go there because it's not always safe, but I guess in groups. And they observe the wildlife. There's not just birds, but a lot of it is birds. So if you like that sort of thing, I recommend it. Okay. Recommend a book about travel. So here's another book about travel to a slightly different area, but also a female traveler, because, you know, to an area that's also a little bit, I would hesitate personally, of being on my own, but she had all kinds of contacts. She did good research. All Strangers Are Kin by Zora O'Neill, Adventures in Arabic and the Arab World. She had already studied Arabic before and already traveled to a number of Arab countries, but she was returning. And this is almost 10 years ago, maybe more than 10 years ago at this point. It was published a few years, maybe 5 years ago. I don't know. I actually got this autographed. I was learning Arabic at the time, so it helps me actually because she does renew her studies of Arabic, so there's a lot of talk about different types of pronunciation and words that actually helps when you're trying to learn it. I've since given up, but I do sometimes practice a little bit so that I don't forget what I've learned. But a great story, and of not so much people that I don't know altogether, because I do live in an area that has a good amount of people from Egypt, Lebanon, Morocco, etc. But sometimes, you don't always get to visit people in their homes and in their actual lands of origin, so that's kind of fun. She goes to different schools as well, but she also stays with families and stuff, which I always like. I don't know if you do. So, okay, what nature writing book are you most excited about on your TBR? And I can't even go into how many books I'm excited about reading. I still haven't started. I'm about to, though. Mozart Starling, which I keep mentioning on this channel. Four Wings and a Prayer. Let's learn about some butterflies. Forest Therapy, because I need therapy. But I thought I'd choose another one with a black cat on the cover. And this is a book. I read a book called... It's called Life in a Cat House by this writer. And that was a more recent book, but this is probably one of the more breakthrough books that she wrote, and that's Homer's Odyssey by Gwen Cooper, about a blind cat named Homer. Very fitting if you know anything about Homer, or supposedly Homer, in ancient times, not Simpson. So, yeah, I do another book that I got for $1 at Book Off, and I just need to get to, and it's brand new. Like, it's perfectly brand new. I love that. I love when I get a book and it's like not a mark on it, but it will be by the time I'm done probably. So this is an interesting question, because when I decided to answer the questions myself, I hadn't started filming yet, obviously, but then it was a book that was on its way, but it arrived. I don't even know when it arrived. It was in my mailbox when I checked this morning. So after I was throwing out everything. Oh, I haven't gotten to that story yet. But what nature writing book are you most excited about that you don't have access to yet? So as of the other day, I didn't have access to it, but now that's changed. But I thought, I'm still excited about it. The Seabird's Cry. So The Lives and Loves of Puffins, Gannets, and Other Ocean Voyagers by Adam Nicholson. I ordered this from Book Depository because I think it was Natalie, had this book, and I just liked the UK edition so much better than the one I saw for the US, and the price difference was not a big deal, and Book Depository is just amazing. So this is totally up my alley, at least I think it is, and I just love this copy. So, and I like the color too. It's turquoise-ish. It's not exactly my favorite color, but it's up there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, but it is in my hands now, and I don't have any other ones coming to me right now that are nature books. So I do have a few books on order, but they're not nature books. Anyway, not a lot, not as much as you'd think. Number 9, why do you love nature writing? Honestly, I can't say if I'm gonna pick like genres, types of books that I read. I wouldn't say nature writing is the top that I'm known for, unless you count reading out tea to be nature, because sometimes it can be because there's plants involved or whatever. But no, come on. However, I do feel like one should be interested in creation, because we are in a situation, not everybody, I know a lot of people who are watching this could live in the country, could take all kinds of hikes, and could live with a billion types of animals and plants and gardens and whatnot, but a lot of people live in cities, and I am one of them. And there is nature, which I'm going to get into in a minute, but there's not as much to observe. You have to really try to observe animals. and plants, etc. I have a few plants. I don't seem to keep them going, so not enough to write a book about. And I have 3 cats, and they are all interesting and fascinating, but there's so much more, and I can't seem to get to it. So I have to read about it. And other humans' encounters with nature just happens to be fascinating to me because everybody's different. Their reaction, their relationship. Some people write about nature and they don't necessarily have a rapport with nature. Some do. Some of them are amazing and they can walk up to any animal and become friends somehow. And some really have to work at it. When I talk about sheepish, I'll get into that a little more. Not that she doesn't like animals, but she's a little more of a city girl, so it's a bigger adjustment. So that's something. Also, I've traveled a little bit in my life, but not the way some have. I have a few health issues that are not as serious as other people's, so I try not to complain about it too much, but it makes life somewhat inconvenient, especially traveling. Road trips even can be difficult for me, even just airplanes. But I do it when I can. But traveling to certain places between certain neurological things that I deal with, certain digestive issues, just my anxiety in general, makes it hard for me to go to certain places that other people who even look and seem to be a lot like me might have no problem doing. Not to mention financially. And I'm not someone who really is good at roughing it. And a lot of these types of animals and trees and plants that I read about are not necessarily accessible to someone who can only either walk or in other days take the subway. So it's a vicarious enjoyment, and I think it's one way to learn without necessarily having to go out. So this is a good time to also be reading about things that we really can't encounter. So if that makes sense, I don't know. Again, I even though I am a city girl, I'm not saying I'm against going out to any type of nature or any kind of national park, whatever. But I don't do it as much as someone who has an interest would do. So I have to read about it. So this goes into number 10, describe the nature around where I live. I live in New York City. I live in Queens, which there are parts of Queens that are a little wilder, as it were, closer to the bigger parks. But I still can see, in intervals, I see squirrels in my backyard. It's not my backyard, but it's the backyard. I see them on my block sometimes. I see pigeons. I see, oh, by the way, the squirrels are gray squirrels. That's the only ones I see. I have seen a couple of black squirrels, but very rarely. I can see, if I go to Central Park, I can see raccoons, hawks, maybe owls. I haven't yet. I can see, in my neighborhood, I've seen opossums, but not every day, but they're around sometimes. Different kinds of birds, like robins will show up here and there, even outside my window. There was one recently. And obviously cats, dogs, that sort of thing. Seagulls that I mentioned. But that's not as much as some people see. I have not seen a sheep in ages. I don't see foxes, and they don't seem to be urban foxes in New York that I know of. Maybe that'll change. Ducks and stuff once in a while. So, yes, and geese. But I feel a sneeze coming. It wasn't a sneeze. It was just about to sneeze. Didn't happen. So yes, I do have nature. I had a wonderful encounter with nature today in that, probably my fault because I was leaving cat food out for some of the outside cats in a window by my kitchen. And they used to come pretty quickly and eat it, but they've come to a habit where if I put it out early in the day, they don't come until nighttime. So now I seem to, even before this, but I seem to mostly to be blamed to have attracted ants. And I know it's better than other types of bugs, but they were everywhere in my kitchen this morning, and I had to go to town trying to get rid of them. They ruined a container of scones that I thought were closed properly, but no. It was not fun, and I don't think I don't think it's over yet. So far, I haven't found any around my tea, but that is not the nature I want to encounter. But I know that if you're dealing with one type, if the more of the natural world you deal with, you have to deal with the good and the bad. So, oh well. You know what I'd like to see more of is bunnies, but I never see that around here. Anyway, that was my, well, you know, my way of saying, yes, I have some nature, but I am a city person, so not as much as I would like. Of course, we do have trees. There are trees in front of my building. There are plants. I even see dandelions. Some people collect dandelions to eat, to make a salad. I wouldn't in this neighborhood because I'm pretty sure every dandelion in a crack in the pavement is probably also a toilet for a dog. So, no. But I do see other, things growing here and there, just not as much as I'd like, especially with my limited access to parks right now. But I'm not complaining right now. Number 11, do a shout out to another channel you know that reads nature writing. And I've mentioned a few recently, especially the hosts of Springathon. But when I was starting to get into BookTube and I wasn't sure if I was going to actually do it myself, when I was just watching videos, and I already mentioned this before, at first I was not sure because there were a few people talking about classics, which I am very much into reading. And then there was a lot about YA, which I read very little of. So I thought, I don't know if I'll ever really 100% get into BookTube, but I like so far what I see. And then I found certain people that were actually talking about not just these things, but nonfiction and nature writing in general, which before that I had only seen very little of on BookTube. And I know that I just had to keep looking and I'd find them. Now I know that anyway, but at the time it was, the only one I found and that I branched out from there was Olive at a Book Olive. And she was the one who made me realize that there are people on BookTube who read books that I also read and want to read more of. So I'm going to say Olive because, from there, she's shouted out, not just me, but also other people who read nature writing books and things and other types of books. But, and so that kept me learning about more people. So there are so many wonderful people out there who read these kind of books. So, and then, I could also tag, but I feel like a lot of the people that I would have tagged about this, I have already been tagged. But if you're watching this and you are a booktuber and you have been thinking of answers yourself to these questions, then consider yourself tagged. Because if you haven't yet, you have been now. That's all. So I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. This is, I do really enjoy talking about these books. I could talk more about them, but I will in the future. This has given me more encouragement to not only read more books about all of these things, but to talk about it more on this channel. So whatever good comes out of things, right? So this is Catherine at Taking Tea with Catherine. Have a lovely tea and book filled, but not ant filled day. Bye.